So the last team here, guys, we're not gonna really get into all the NBA free agency. Like, there's a lot, so we're just going on the teams that have made like the most moves and the best moves, really. So I think the next team, for me, is the New York Knicks, right? And I like the fact that they're bringing in Jordan Clarkson. They're bringing in Yabuzele, if that's how you pronounce his
Yeah,
name, the French dude.
Yabusele. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yabusele. Former Celtic.
yeah, former Celtic. That is right. That is right. So now they have a great 9-man rotations. But with those two signings right there, they haven't made any trades or anything else just as of yet. Obviously, it'll come down. But just with those two, what do you think about the Knicks right now?
I think it's a good fit. I'm not like it doesn't jump off the boat or anything for me. Like I'm not like whoa, but I think in the last year or two at Utah, Jordan Clarkson looked a little more mature. He does still take a lot of reckless threes and things like that, but on a team like that where you pretty much have a green light because there is nobody else on the perimeter, why not? Um, that is kind of the piece that they needed. Somebody who can be Brunson when Brunson's not on the court. Because when he was on the bench, yeah, they went through Cat a lot. And I will say, like in the regular season, but like in the playoffs, Cat did step up and he gets a lot of credit for that. He had a lot of clutch shots and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, once they got to a team like Indiana, it became okay, well, can you match our guard play? Can you match our pace? Can you run the speed that we're running all day, the tempo? No, because once Brunson's out, you're kind of slow. So, and I like Hart. Hart's a good player. He's a hustler, things like that. But he is much like you mentioned earlier. The way you view Michael Porter Jr., which I agree with, is the way I view Josh Hart. When things aren't falling for him on 3-point line, sometimes he gets a little lazy on the defense. Sometimes he's not getting those little offensive boards like he does at late games when shots are falling. So, I'm not saying Clarkson replaces that, but I do think he can kind of be. You can play the same system when Brunson's on the bench when you have Clarkson there, which, he's not as great a passer, but it's still, you got a guard who can dribble, create, score, hit the three. And like you said, adding Yabusele gives them some more physicality, kind of like what Mitchell Robinson gives them, except for hopefully not as injured. But, it is a good move for the Knicks. Obviously, if Mike Brown is the coach, that's going to happen. Not sure, but they got to get that figured out. But they're not a team that needs a lot. So for what it is, those are good moves.
Yeah, for me, it was just what they really needed is more depth, right? And especially,
Yeah,
in today's NBA, you saw it with the Indiana Pacers, you saw it with the Oklahoma City Thunder. You got 6, 7, 8 deep that can run the floor, that can play defense. Most of them can shoot, not all of them. They can get some layups, some dunks. They could play make. They can play with each other. They have that team chemistry. And you give the rest to the starters in the playoffs. You're trying to win 16 games to get to the promised end, to hold up the trophy. And it takes sometimes even more than that. You got to play more than that, but still you got to have good legs. You got to be able to rest. And that was the number one thing I thought with the New York Knicks going into the playoffs, that they're not going to be able to rest as much. One, because their coach loves the whole system of like, yo, I'm only running 5, 6, maybe 7 in the playoffs. Everybody's gonna play 40 plus minutes and all this crap. But like, we need rest. There's a lot of fast paced offense going down in the NBA. You got to play both ways. You gotta be able to defend and be able to run the floor and score on the other end. And if you only got 5, 6 players that are doing that each and every night of every single game in the playoffs, by the time the Eastern Conference Finals comes around, the NBA Finals comes around, your team is gassed. So I think adding these two players, like you mentioned, Jordan Clarkson, can be that Jalen Brunson. I do agree with that. Obviously, he's not as good,
yeah.
guys, but he can be that guy. He play makes. He shoots the three a little bit better now. He can score at the rim. He's very confident in himself. And then Yabuzele, if that's how you pronounce it.
That wasn't bad. I will roll with that one.
Yeah, we're roll with that. We're roll with that. I love his intensity. He's fighting
Yeah,
for each and every rebound. He's playing in defense with the best of them. Like, he will not back down from anybody. And obviously,
it
the New
did.
York Knicks are that type of team. So I think it's very well fitting for him. Now they got 7, 8, 9 guys that they could run in the rotation. Maybe they could go a little bit further than just the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, and that's a guy that if you remember, teams were trying to guard Shaq back in the day. You foul out, foul out, foul out, like all these guys. And you can't have your best guys fouling out. Like Jalen Brunson and Cat were picking up 3 fouls in the first 20 minutes of a game every single game in that playoffs. So you need more guys like them that can play the same system, and not to say take fouls or anything like that. But a guy like Yabusele, he's going to pick up 4 or 5 hard-earned fouls, and if you lose them, no big deal because he's not critical to the offense. So that's good.